Hello and welcome to In Conversation With, the monthly podcast series brought to you by the team that produce Global Cosmetics News. Is 2021 the year the industry addresses the broken color cosmetics business model? How do we fix questionable ingredient sourcing, overproduction of un-recyclable packaging, homogenous products, marketing the marketing, retail's renaissance, the post-pandemic consumer, and still be able to meet the beauty needs of women today? Which companies have already changed direction? And how can the industry learn from them? To help me answer these questions and more, it is my pleasure to introduce this month's panel. Welcome to Mallory Huron, Strategist, Beauty and Wellness at Fashion Snoops. We are also joined by Ross Beagrie, Commercial Director at DCYPHER, and a warm welcome to Gillian Gorman, CEO at Kjaer Weis. Mallory, let's start with you. In 2021, what are the key social drivers impacting the global cosmetics market?
Well, I think culturally, our society is still processing much of its trauma from the pandemic, and the effects from the pandemic are still very much fluid in nature. The need for calm and stress-free simplicity has been a major movement within color cosmetics, as we see consumers increasingly gravitating towards less but better products, multifunctional options, and quality hero products that embrace what has been called emotional beauty, which is this intrinsic emotional connection between our beauty routines and our emotional state. We're really craving a more intentional connection with our routines, resulting in less consumerist and more conscious consumption. When we buy something, we want it to support our mental health, our lifestyles, and our ethics. Next, I also think we're seeing this emergence of a real need to indulge and escape, which we're seeing play out through the TikTok-driven aesthetic trend, with things like cottagecore, royalcore, and Y2K becoming fun opportunities for consumers to use makeup to try on new personas. I think there's something to be said about this potential new roaring 20s, which has been the subject of much discussion in comparison to the 1920s. And socially, we definitely expect to see a continued need to celebrate and feel good, fueling continued color cosmetics trends like the nostalgia movement, which is seemingly nonstop at the moment. And lastly, inclusivity, of course, remains a huge focus for color cosmetics as we see the continuation of social justice movements that swept the cultural zeitgeist last year. The real shift we're seeing is towards more tailored options for people of color, with brands like Ami Cole's tinted skin enhancing tint that prides itself on being makeup for melanin-rich skin. Melanin-rich has become a major trend, a word within color cosmetics, along with the term culturally rooted, as we see consumers gravitating towards beauty rituals that really mirror their authentic experiences and cultural identity.
And talking tailored products, Ross, at DCYPHER, what are the key social drivers impacting your business?
Well, we've seen the Zoom cultures have quite a big impact as to how consumers are buying products, which we've seen that is starting to return now. But we saw consumers really not feeling the need to wear as many products as they would have done. We're now seeing that return to similar levels to where it was before. But talking particularly about tailored options. I think Mallory mentioned about technology starting to be more of a bigger trend within the space. So there's a lot of people out there who are trying to bring technology to the sector, but don't necessarily have an option that really drives value for the consumer. And that's really where we come in with our technology of being able to do something that really makes a difference. So having a truly inclusive approach that allows consumers to build their own products and to be able to get the product that they really need that doesn't just tick a box, but really starts to bring a product to them that really is unique. And as I say, doesn't just tick a box in saying that it's personalized and being a standard formula with a few slight tweaks. Being able to build out a concept and a product that is truly unique to them is becoming more and more not only desirable, but more and more of a need. And also the on-demand aspect. So being able to create a product that can be delivered instantly. We're seeing Deliveroo partnering with a number of retailers to create that instant gratification, as it were, of delivering the product to the consumer very quickly. We're seeing that as being more of a a requirement for customers of being able to get things as quickly as possible. And the on-demand aspect then flows into the sustainability aspect of, if you're making the product directly for the customer that is purely based on what they need, then you hit a point of zero waste, which moves away from that greenwashing aspect of being able to say this truly is going to have a big impact on the sustainability of the sector.
And at Kjaer, Weis, Gillian?
Well, I think that Mallory and Ross have both made really, really interesting points. And we are a brand. We are a brand that is slightly over 10 years old, founded by Kjaer Weis, who founded the brand as a leading makeup artist to be rooted in certified organic ingredients and high performance delivered through certified organic ingredients. And all of our packaging is either refillable, recyclable, or recycled. And of course, I refer you back to the fact that this brand has been in operation for over 10 years and is rooted in those principles. So really was ahead of its time. And I think a lot of what Mallory was referring to in terms of the thoughtful consumer, buying products that one loves and has great joy in using, but really uses. The idea that the shoebox full of product that is in the back of the cupboard that one doesn't use anymore is very passé. It's not chic, it's not current, and it's not what the consumer wants coming out of the pandemic. And I agree again with what Mallory was saying about we're still processing a lot of the lasting impact from that. And the lasting impact will be on consumption and on thoughtful consumption. No less desire for product, no less hunger for the joy and the gorgeousness of beauty. And I think a return to dressing up and getting made up and feeling great about oneself. And of course, makeup and beauty in general is a huge part of that, but definitely teamed with what we don't just see as a trend, but we see absolutely as a movement to thoughtful consumption, and tying that into not just the product doing exactly what you want it to do and performing to the very best of its abilities for you as a consumer, but also being a better product for the planet and better for our impact. And I don't think these things go away. I think these are movements, not trends.
So Mallory, in 2021, what are the key digital drivers assisting the global cosmetics color market?
Well, this is an area that we're really closely tracking at Fashion Snoops, and one where we're seeing some exciting innovation. We're seeing huge growth in digital makeup options, NFTs, and more realistic AR, VR makeup try-on platforms. Virtual makeup and NFT makeup is certainly a fascinating area to follow. As a society, we really want to express ourselves through digital avatars and virtual alter egos, a concept which, only a few years ago would have been seen as kitschy or futuristic niche, but the digital acceleration of the pandemic has definitely cemented this area as an essential aspect of all of our lives. Anyone who's used a Zoom makeup filter option over the past year and a half is already incorporating virtual makeup into their daily presentation of themselves. And virtual makeup is really going to change the way we view color cosmetics in the future. Options are becoming so advanced that you can take a picture completely barefaced and not only erase imperfections, but also add a full face of makeup. And this is why we're seeing savvy makeup brands get in on this trend early. NYX Makeup, for example, recently partnered with designer Rebecca Minkoff during NFT Fashion Week, creating a variety of exclusive makeup, digital makeup options for the designer. And with digital models on the rise and virtual alter egos trending, having elevated virtual makeup options will become increasingly important. We're even seeing whole reality shows arise from the concept, with a new skiing competition, Alter Ego, in which contestants use a digital avatar to gain the confidence to compete and express themselves. And lastly, the influence of social media still can't be understated. Instagram and TikTok remain hugely influential platforms for color cosmetics trends as consumers look to join in on viral aesthetics, challenges, and product recommendations. The recent buzz, for example, over Clinique's Black Honey, a simple staple product that's been around since 1971. Anecdotally, I remember it being one of the first lipsticks I used, is the latest proof of the TikTok effect. as this universally flattering lipstick went viral over the app, resulting in a run on black honey lipsticks, with numerous articles and TikToks advising over dupes for this popular product. So expect to see more of this influence in the future.
And DCYPHER is a digital business, Ross. What is driving the business forward in 2021?
Well, we've seen a lot of push to brands be more active online, and they're struggling to find a way to cut through and to offer something that's truly different. And that's, we originally started off as an in-person experience. That was our business model was built around being in retail, and we were going to be the reason why consumers should travel back to stores, having been dropping off online for a number of years. And then, of course, the pandemic arrived, and we had to pivot our business model. We had no idea in March 2020 how long stores would be shut for. We were a startup. We were still trying to prove our technology to the world, and we couldn't wait a year for retail to reopen. So we then worked with some partners and did a lot of development work internally to create the technology that you see when you visit our website today. We work with a couple of other partner brands as well, but predominantly our focus is on our brand DCYPHER. And when we set out to do this, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a fad and a gimmick. And this is what I referred to earlier of there is a lot of technology now and a lot of businesses, whether it's Perfect Core, Revive, and a whole host of others who are looking to develop a product and an experience and a more immersive experience at that means that their customers and ultimately their customers, consumers, feel like they've got more from the experience than had they just had the traditional experience of buying online. And it's quite difficult to do because a lot of the time to a consumer, it feels quite gimmicky or quite faddy and can feel like you're getting the same experience, just elongated over a longer period. And everything we've done and a lot of the other tech providers out there are trying to do is to make it more gamified, more interesting, more engaging through the process. And what we've tried to do, or what we do, is to allow customers to co-create. So rather than just being prescriptive, which we've seen that consumers don't necessarily like being told what to do and what is right for them, but they do want some assistance in finding the right product. And the future really is going to be about a truly immersed, personalized experience. And this is something that's in our pipeline longer term, is how do we use information from consumers that they're happy to provide to create a fully recommended, more than just a look, but a kind of almost like an ecosystem that means that a consumer can find every product they need without that trial and error. And we mentioned earlier about the shoebox. I think it was Mallory might have mentioned about that the shoebox of shame, as we call it, which is full of foundations that consumers have tried, and then it sits there out of sight, never used, and is just a total waste of the consumer's money and also the resource that has gone into not just making it, but shipping it. And then it's never used. It's just a total waste. So, there's a lot of factors wrapped up in this, but we come back to sustainability being one and the experience for the consumer being the other. And that is, particularly what we're trying to change, is to make sure that the customer gets a good experience. And we're also reducing the impact that we as an industry have on the planet.
And how core is digital technology at Kjaer Weis, Gillian?
Well, I think like every brand, it's absolutely core. Our goal is to be a digital first brand, and so far this year we've moved our D2C business from being 33% of our total sales at the beginning of the year to just around about 50% of our total sales year to date. So that's where we want to be. We truly believe in wholesale and the right bricks and mortar experience, particularly as a luxury brand. And there's a lot of interesting conversation to be had around what the definition of luxury is in the future. And I certainly think that comes back to thoughtful consumption and products that one uses and loves, even if they're confidently priced. I think that's what the consumer wants. But in terms of digital and the movements in digital technology, absolutely, for any brand, whether little or very big, the staying current and staying ahead, if at all possible, of what is happening in the digital landscape is critical, because that is where the consumer is. And the pandemic simply accelerated those consumer habits, as both Mallory and Ross have said. There's both areas within our control, creating content, being relevant, making sure that we are putting out messaging and content and entertainment fundamentally that our consumer audience feels is relevant and exciting for them. And there are then many different actors and things happening within the digital landscape that are out of our control. The iOS 14 update, which of course has completely and utterly changed the landscape around retargeting for all Apple users, which, as we know, in the West and in an affluent audience is the majority of our user base. The recent iOS 15 update, which is the potential to limit email sharing with brands. These are two factors that we're having to work our way through, as is every other consumer brand within the industry, whether beauty or any other channel of fast-moving consumer goods. We're seeing, paid media become, frankly, less productive, as has the rest of the industry. Rates have gone up, productivity has come down. So while we continue to focus and pivot to being a digital first business, for whatever that means for each individual business, we're also having to make sure that we are taking into account offline opportunities as well, to really ensure that we have a rounded experience for our consumer, because the digital model has changed and will continue to change.
And talking thoughtful production, Mallory, in 2021, what are the environmental drivers impacting the global color cosmetics market?
Well, we're really seeing an interesting shift in the way that consumers are now pursuing sustainability. Firstly, consumers are becoming more cognizant of the impact of makeup formulations themselves, not just packaging. Popular ingredients like mica and carmine are being phased out for ethical and environmental reasons, with brands looking to biotech alternatives to these ingredients that deliver pigment payoff without harming the environment, animals, or communities. We're also seeing an overall return to more raw, wholesome, simple materials for packaging that upcycle unwanted or discarded items and reconnect consumers with sustainable source materials. We're seeing everything from clay, upcycled seashells, stone, and compostable materials arise. Another important movement we're tracking is the low waste movement as opposed to zero waste. Brands are increasingly realizing that over-promising and under-delivering is not the way to win consumers' hearts or trust, as consumers have become incredibly critical of brand actions within sustainability. Instead, brands who want to do good but cannot immediately make radical changes are instead opting for low-waste solutions and commitments. It's simply not possible for every brand to immediately make the jump to zero waste and full sustainability, but we're seeing encouraging commitments from brands like Besame Cosmetics, who recently introduced their refillable vintage-inspired compacts, representing a definite step in the right direction, and consumers really do appreciate this effort and authenticity. We're also watching movements like the green beauty movement shift into the blue beauty movement, as consumers and brands alike become increasingly concerned about the welfare of our world's waterways, with a particular emphasis, of course, on the ocean. Brands like Tarte utilize marine-based extracts in several of their Rainforest of the Sea color cosmetics, while also giving back to ocean-focused nonprofits like the Sea Turtle Conservancy to help protect and preserve marine life. And lastly, we're of course also seeing increased solutions for the beauty industry's single-use plastic problem, with mascara in particular becoming a particular source of focus for eco-friendly innovation, not only given mascara's continued endurance throughout the pandemic as eyes became the focal point of the face during mask mandates, but also because it is one of the most frequently used and disposed of makeup items. Brands like MLB Beauty use a clean and vegan formula, post-consumer PET plastic, and refill programs, with other brands like Izzy Zero Waste utilizing a subscription system with consumers sending back tubes on a 3-month cycle, similar to up-and-coming brand Shosh Beauty. And so we're really seeing these alternate approaches with refills, biodegradable materials, and packaging that helps consumers become more eco-friendly within their daily routines.
And Ross, would you say DCYPHER was a low waste business?
Absolutely. We didn't set out to create an eco brand. We set out to create a product that would be, and a technology, because our technology isn't just about foundation, it's applicable in theory and in concept to pretty much any liquid you could imagine. And there are many uses across the beauty sector. It just so happens that we started with the most challenging, which is foundation, because I'm sure everybody would have a view that there's a subjective element, and also technically there's quite a lot to overcome in developing the product. So it's actually quite a happy byproduct that not only do we offer this truly personalized, unique, single customer approach platform, but in doing so, creating on-demand manufacture in a scalable way that can happen in your local store or on a single production based online, it takes out so much of the wasted supply chain that it really can have a big impact to the industry as a whole. That the packaging that we use, a majority of it is recyclable, and as we grow in size, we will make sure that more of it is. And it's about 85% of the material that we use is recycled. We also use FSC approved board for our card packaging. But the main benefit is that you're only shipping the product that you're going to sell. None of our product will go to landfill because you only make it when you sell it, which it has twofold impacts. One, it's great for the retailer because they're only paying for it when they're actually passing the product to the consumer. So it's amazing for working capital. But back to the point of being environmentally sustainable, it's never going to go to landfill because it's never going to age, and it's always going to be needed. That the foundation category as a whole, if you look at the 80-20 Pareto's rule, it's quite unprofitable in a lot of areas, and it's almost impossible for a retailer to be sustainable and be inclusive, because there are so many people out there and everybody has an individual requirement. You can't possibly cater to all those people with the traditional model. And one of the main sell points we have to our partners and third parties is about a truly inclusive offer without compromising the profitability, and also being able to deliver on you truly being sustainable. There is no greenwashing here. It's fully, from an integrity point of view, we can hold our heads high and we know that we are able to really make a difference, rather than back to the box checking exercise that says, yes, we are more sustainable. We are probably as sustainable as you could get as of now. We still have opportunities to improve on that in the future, but we're probably about as good as it gets at the moment.
The birth of Kjaer Weis was a sustainable business, Gillian. The blue movement, is that impacting on you?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, I think that both Ross and Mallory have spoken to it really well, which is an increasing consumer awareness and concern about how their own habits, their own purchasing habits, their own usage habits, etc., impact the globe, whether that is blue, whether that is green, whether that is the quality of our air. And anybody who's a parent, and I have a 13 and 11-year-old, will be able to tell you exactly how much plastic is in the ocean, because the next generation, Gen Z, even more than the millennial generation, who are even ahead of us as Gen X, are absolutely focused on this. So yes, as a brand, this has always been our core concern, which sort of evacuates the whole greenwashing element for us, because this is what we've been doing before anybody else decided that they were going to launch one refillable item and call themselves sustainable. I think, however, what has to happen here, and I think Ross spoke to this very well, and their obviously extraordinary business model of just creating one product per person that person needs and is for them, is also in line with what we do, which is, let's not create it unless it's actually better than what is out there already. Because, take mascara, which Mallory referred to as one of the most highly consumed categories in beauty, which is absolutely right. We should, as mascara users, change our mascara every 6 weeks for the health of our eyes and germs, etc. So if people actually do that, imagine how many they're getting through in a day, in a year, in a decade, in a lifetime. And we were missing within our portfolio at Kjaer Weis a true volumizing mascara, because not just being a sustainable brand, but being a certified organic brand, which often gets lumped in with clean, and clean is an unregulated and undefined part of the market. It's great. It's obviously brought a lot of consumer awareness, but certified organic, we're obviously regulated. We didn't have a truly volumizing mascara. And if you look at mascara consumption, the number one category of mascara globally is volumizing. So we set out to develop and launch a mascara that truly was as good, if not better, than the best-selling traditional brand in mascara, in luxury. And in September, so just last month, we launched Impossible Mascara from Kjaer Weis, which is certified organic by Cosmos Eco Cert, which is has been ranked by 3 out of 4 consumers. So 3 out of 4 women in testing said that it was as good as, if not better, than their classic, volumizing luxury formula, but is also fully refillable, as our products are, and presented in packaging that is recycled. And as Mallory again referred to, one of the challenges with mascara is all of the different parts of componentry. And I believe that we're the first brand ever to actually have a fully recycled wand, which comes from recycled nylon, as well as fully previously post-consumer recycled inner tube, and an aluminium external tube, so that when the consumer needs to replace their mascara, they're just buying the refill and popping it in, and they know that they can recycle the inner. So we passionately believe in our contribution being a positive one to the environment, to the green movement, to the blue movement, etc. And these things all come together. But you can only do that if you are producing a product that people actually want and is going to convert them to a better solution than what they're using already. Because at the end of the day, most consumers that use mascara want a volumized lash. And while they want that to be in a certified organic and sustainable packaging, if they can't get the effect that they need from the product, they will go back to something that isn't that. And therefore, it's our responsibility to ensure that we're not just contributing positively in packaging and environmental footprint, but we're also positively moving people through product performance, which allows them to genuinely participate and become loyal in a new category of business.
Mallory, in 2021, how is government policy aiding or abetting the global color cosmetics market?
Well, globally, we're seeing a shift in consumer demand for stronger legislation and regulation around color cosmetics, with governments finally beginning to intervene when it comes to what goes into our makeup products. Canada, for example, is taking steps to remove talc from cosmetics and personal care items, while regulatory boards are investigating issues like the wide use of contaminated, unregulated cosmetics in Pakistan. While some markets already have very stringent standards for safety and efficacy, other markets like the United States sadly still have a long way to go to align with other international standards in terms of its own federal response to cosmetic regulation. The FDA, for example, has fewer than 30 staff members, which is a shockingly small amount, also considering that the US has banned less than a dozen chemicals, while the EU has banned over 1,600. And while certain states like California have taken individual action, we've yet to see a cohesive federal response until now. In the US, we recently saw the introduction of the Safer Beauty Bill, which bans certain ingredients within cosmetics and also enforces more ingredient transparency. This package actually consists of 4 prospective bills: the Toxic Free Beauty Act, the Cosmetic Supply Chain Transparency Act, the Fragrance and Flavor Right to Know Act, and the Cosmetic Safety for Communities of Color and Professional Salon Workers Act. And that last component, the Cosmetic Safety for Communities of Color and Professional Salon Workers Act, highlights another important area where government and color cosmetics collide, that communities of color have historically been exposed to the most dangerous chemicals and the least amount of regulation when it comes to cosmetic safety, making it all more important for governments to get involved in this issue. In addition, there's also a growing movement to try and regulate, reduce, and altogether remove animal testing worldwide. Aiding this movement is the steady growth of the vegan beauty trend within markets like China, Korea, and Japan, which is driving calls to reverse the need for animal testing. China's National Medical Products Association, for example, has already lifted certain requirements for animal testing on imported quote-unquote ordinary cosmetics, marking a huge shift in policy. Elsewhere, groups like the Beagle Freedom Project are advocating for stricter legislation to ban animal testing in any form and are working to increase consumer awareness and education when making beauty purchases.
And what have been the Brexit challenges at DCYPHER, Ross?
Oh, wow. Yeah, considerable. Things that a year ago would have been very simple, would have required very little effort, now require a huge amount. So there's, I suppose personally, I don't think that legislation goes far enough when it comes to the sustainability aspects, but equally the Brexit scenario makes what they have done harder to comply with because it becomes more fragmented, different markets with different rules. But the biggest problem is around shipping, around moving. We have machines which are very expensive to insure and manufacture that we need to move around markets. So we have some in Italy at the moment, some in France, and we have been trying to enable those for, well, nearly a year now, but predominantly because of Brexit and also the pandemic, to be honest. We've had huge delays. We have one machine that we're now trying to return from Italy back to the UK, and it's taken over a month to get that back to the UK for something that would have taken 3-4 days a year ago. So the cost, the time, the knowledge required is considerable now. The impact and cost of duties and VAT, it's beyond a headache. And I think some of the impacts we're going to see from this is that more indie brands, smaller brands that have been a big part of our market for quite a long time, driving change and being challenges in the industry, it's going to become harder and harder for them to be able to meet the legislation, whether that's for Brexit, because let's be honest, we can't just be brands within the UK now. We have to be pan-European and global brands realistically to be able to survive, because you need that scale, and it's hard to find purely within the UK. So there's a lot of challenges within Brexit and logistically, and also in being compliant with every market you want to operate in. But then really it comes down to the cost of being compliant, because there's a lot of specialist knowledge required. And then there's a lot of paperwork and there's a lot of processes that need to be completed, which means that those brands who are probably driving the most creative aspects of our industry are going to find it harder and harder to find the scale that they need to be able to survive.
What are the global challenges at Kjaer Weis, Gillian?
I think Ross spoke to it really well, which is that life becomes more and more complicated, and it comes more and more complicated because of factors and a lot of the uncertainty and new paperwork and rules and regulations around Brexit. And then you have to twin that with the knock-on impact of the pandemic into supply chain, whether that's raw material lack of availability, the worldwide shortage of glass, the fact that no shipping container is in the right part of the world at the moment, and it's almost as expensive to ship by sea rather than air, which takes us back to our problem with environmental impact, but making sure that we stay commercial. It's almost like a perfect storm at the moment, and every brand, no matter the size, is dealing with it. And of course, we will deal with it because we all have the ambition to be global brands and to make sure that we leave a positive impact on the planet as we do so. So we have no choice but to say, okay, how do we manage this? How do we push through it? But it does lead to making decisions. Do you open a certain market at that time? Can you do multiple things simultaneously, or do you have to make more considered choices as a brand? And I think that's part of being in business. I think that's part of being a leader, is to be able to identify decisions given a set of parameters that you're working with. But certainly a lot of these changes that we are seeing are impacting that in a much more dramatic way than any one of us could have predicted coming into 2021. And I think then going back to sort of the government issued mandates and restrictions, I have to say I think that many governments are doing an interesting job about trying to keep up with consumers. I think the US is far behind, as Mallory stated. But I think fundamentally, brands are more being led by consumer sentiment than they are government regulation at the moment. once, of course, as a brand, you have complied with the restrictions that you face within the territory with which you want to market, and of course the EU being very restrictive on one area and China in another. So I think that we're in a moment of being a consumer-led industry, which is no bad thing. I just hope that those governments that need to around the world catch up to stay current with what their population wants.
So we're becoming a consumer-led industry, Mallory. What should the global color cosmetics market look like in 12 months' time?
Well, as scientists predict that we're entering the endemic stage of COVID-19 in many areas, which is to say that coronavirus becomes a regular part of life that we adapt to and live with, like the seasonal flu, we're going to see the arrival of the actual new normal that will govern our lives for the foreseeable future. In this new reality, consumers are going to begin to habituate themselves to our COVID-19 adaptations, which will have a really interesting effect on our makeup choices. The effects of this will certainly be different from consumer to consumer, but one of the larger trends that we expect to play out is definitely this exploration of new identities. People are reinventing themselves post-pandemic, and we expect to see this experimentation through bold makeup looks. Certainly across the recent Global Fashion Week runways, we saw an array of colorful, creative makeup artistry, previewing an exciting year ahead for makeup. I think we can expect consumers to really step out of their comfort zones and embrace embellishment, vivid pigments, and more artistic looks that maybe they might not have gone for before the pandemic. And conversely, as consumers are radically rethinking the routines and continuing to focus on quality, less but better products, as well as skincare, we expect to see more of this skinification of color cosmetics, with makeup products designed to care for and improve skin appearance over time. Recent examples like Pure Voc by Wonder Skin represent this fusion of skincare and makeup with their blurring, illuminating, and tone perfecting serum. While overall, we also expect to see color cosmetics continue to adapt formulation-wise to mask mandates, with more long-lasting, breathable formulations that don't irritate the skin or cause maskne. And lastly, we certainly hope to see the continuation of sustainability and more plentiful and improved eco-conscious options, along with more inclusive and diverse brands and products tailored to people of color.
And for you, Ross, what does DCYPHER look like in the next 12 months?
Well, from our perspective, we hope and expect that retail will continue to bounce back. We're already seeing a lot of positivity. I think online will continue to be a very important, a much more important part of any retailer's repertoire than it was previously. I think there's a big opportunity for enhancing the experience in store. So giving consumers and customers a real reason to go back into store to get something that they won't get online. And at the same time, seeing the offer advance and progress online with, less quirky, less gimmicky, more truly value-added experiences. There's a lot of people out there spending a lot of time, money, and effort to develop those concepts. And I think there's some really clever stuff that is going on out in the marketplace now that, as that starts to come to market, will drive a lot of loyalty for the right retailers. And we've talked about a lot of challenges that the industry faces, which is, it can be quite negative and very difficult, but with that comes opportunity as well. So whether we're talking about ourselves or other, challenger evolving brands, can really give them an opportunity to take advantage of that situation. That, we've talked about our approach to sustainability is, far and away pretty much every brand that's out there. The challenges that come with that, with sustainability in the marketplace, also create the opportunity for us to drive our awareness and our market share beyond that of our competitors. But then also for the independent brands we talked about earlier, they have a lot of challenges in just their profitability and being able to survive. I think that's going to lead to a lot of M&A activity within the marketplace and a lot of consolidation. And I think we'll have to wait and see whether that's actually a good thing for the market and the industry as a whole or not. Personally, I hope it is, because the smaller brands and brands who have some vision and can really lead the categories that they're participating in the future need that support to help them get to where they are going to have enough scale to really drive things forward. That's what I'd like to see.
And for you, Gillian?
Well, we've had an extraordinary year at Kjaer Weis with amazing growth in all categories and in all channels, which has sort of rather flown in the face of some of the challenges that we've all described on this call between supply chain and closures owing to the pandemic. And I think it comes back to 2022. We will see that resurgence of that consumer love for beauty. We've spoken about it, starting to see it this year, starting to see, as Mallory described, the kind of the coming out of the pandemic into the endemic stage, and what does beauty mean for a consumer. And I think as an industry, beauty is exciting and should be exciting and dynamic. And I think that we see consumers all over the world hungry for that dynamism, but again, to refer back to something we've said, in a very, very thoughtful way. I think, as Ross refers to quite correctly, the challenges for smaller and independent brands, of course, of which we are one, rapidly growing but independent, is how do we manage working capital and the financials and the opportunities that we have against some of the challenges that will remain in supply chain availability, etc. So I see it being another critical year with masses of upside and some really thoughtful business behavior to get us there. I think it's very interesting what we're seeing, particularly in markets like the UK, where stores are really open and the vast majority of the population is vaccinated. And I've been lucky enough to be back in London, although I live in New York, twice in the last 6 weeks for business. And I'm struck by how much activity and how much transactional activity is happening in stores. And I think we're going to see that continuation into 2022, both in stores and, of course, with the convenience and the personalization of online from a consumer who wants to get back at it, but wants to do it in a really thoughtful way. And I think we'll continue to see the rise of the challenger brands that can make it, and the continued challenge for some of the very big heritage brands that perhaps look less current to the consumer and have not embraced sustainability and ingredients, etc., in the way that some of the smaller, more independent brands, the challenger brands, have done.
And with that, I would like to thank all my guests, Mallory, Ross and Gillian, for joining me today, and to you for listening.